then a few hours later, that's when I got the voicemail. And now that infamous voicemail from a woman who called to complain to the station, saying that she was very offended because if a white person talked about what white people ate, they would get fired, and that I was very Asian and that I needed to keep my Korean to myself. She said I was annoying. So I took a video of myself listening to that voicemail and then put it on social media, and it
blew up,
took off from there.
Yeah.
Blew up.
What's up, St. Louis? This is the STL Bucket List Show. We are happy to partner up with Half Coast Studios to record this podcast, and they actually record it and distribute it to all major platforms, including YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Today, we had the pleasure to interview Michelle Lee. She's been all over the news. She's been going through a lot, and we got to hear a little bit more about her story. So we're excited for that and hope you guys stay and tune in. All right, so we are here today with the Michelle Lee. This is the STL Bucket List Show. We're so excited to have you on. We wanted to start by just telling us a little bit about your upbringing. Give us a look behind Michelle Lee.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, thanks for having me. First of all, it's been great to see you guys. I grew up in Missouri, but I grew up on the other side of the state in really kind of a rural part of Kansas City. I should say we were south of Kansas City in a rural part. Yeah, I mean, I just grew up in Missouri, in Pleasant Hill, Missouri. That was the high school I went to, and actually grew up a little bit outside of there. But it was interesting. It was like super country and a very beautiful, idyllic childhood in many ways. And then, went on to college and then took my first job on the East Coast and the Southeast. And then back to Southwest Missouri, then back to the Southeast, and then back to the upper Midwest and over to the Pacific Northwest. And now here I am back in Missouri. And hopefully this will be our last move, at least for a very, very, very long time. I mean, I can't say I'm going to retire in Missouri, but
well, let's hope
yeah, we like
Let's
Missouri.
Go somewhere sunny. Let's go somewhere sunny.
Yeah, no snow. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. So.
Oh yeah. So were all of your moves based on your career? Is that kind of what, had you moving everywhere?
Yeah, journalism is pretty transient. So usually you sign, 2 to 3 year contracts. Occasionally you can get a bigger contract, but 3 years seems to be the standard, at least when you get to a certain level. So when my first job, it was a year contract in North Carolina. And the funny thing is that my boss, my news director, was terminated like within weeks of me getting there. So I never got to sign a contract, which is actually it actually benefited me because when I was ready to leave, I had a job offer in Springfield, Missouri. And my new news director was like, well, you can't leave, you're under contract. And I was like, well, actually about that, I did not sign one.
Yeah,
so
ready to go.
Yeah. And then I spent I signed multiple contracts in Springfield. I stayed there for almost 8 years. And then went back to North Carolina for another 3 years, and then Wisconsin for 3 years, and Seattle for 2 contracts. But during the pandemic, I made the move to St. Louis just because of everything that had changed in our lives with COVID. So now we're home. But yeah, most people leave. That's why you see so many journalists going, not staying forever if they're not from a place because they're getting the experience and they're moving on.
Right. So what drove you to pursue journalism? Is that something you talked about your high school a little bit. Is that you started that right in college? Is that what you went to school for? How did you get there?
It's actually funny because I did start in journalism, but there are different kinds of journalism. So you could do strategic communications, you could do, basically PR or something like that. And I always thought I would do something business related. I always thought I would do something in communications, but I did not think that I would do something in actual journalism. I just, one year I was getting my, what is it? Oh my gosh, what's the word? The syllabus? Not the syllabus. My schedule.
Yeah.
gosh, I'm like, wait, what was it called?
Same thing, somewhat, yeah.
Yeah, I was, planning my schedule for my junior year, and I was like, oh wait, can I take this reporting class? It was a reporting 101 class, and I thought, I don't know if that's really going to be useful for me, but I want to do it. And then when I took the class, I fell in love with reporting, and so some people knew when they were like 4 years old that they wanted to be in broadcasting or wanted to be a journalist. I did not know that. But when I look back at my life, I can see how I did want that kind of job. I just didn't know that that's what that meant. I think at the end of the day, didn't really think I had the confidence to be a reporter or be a journalist, because I thought they had to be like really smart and, like really just great communicators,
right,
or present well on television. I didn't think that I had any of that stuff made in me. But when you learn that, like, a lot of that's just craft, that being dedicated to a craft, you get better. And I think having the, either the laziness or the determination to stick to something.
Yeah, that's what we say all the time. If you do it, then that's when you figure out what you're actually good at. So I think that's kind of what it sounds like is what happened for you. So
yeah, that is exactly.
That's amazing, because it's sometimes you just fall into the right craft, especially going through college. So when you got into journalism, do you have like a specific story or segment that inspires you or like drove you, or like still to this day it probably changes all the time? Is there like a specific stories that you like to work on, or segments, or?
Well, I think stories that have actual impact. I mean, I like to think that all my stories have impact, but I do know that there is, there's a thing that we have to do in the industry. Sometimes we just have to, make the donuts. Sometimes we have to get things done on a deadline. Sometimes news of the day can really be something that you might not see as impactful, but you have to do.
Right.
I mean, of course it's impactful to somebody, but it might not have like great impact, and it just might be a horrific thing that happened that you've got to cover. And those days are hard, but that's part of the job.
Right.
And then there are really great stories that you can do where you can uncover truths or make changes, or, it's really cool when you have, when you're reporting influences changes at like a municipal or a state or a national level. That's really incredible. And it feels like, okay, I did something in the right direction.
Yeah.
So that's what keeps people in it, I think, because the highs can be really high. But the lows can also be really low in journalism. Like there are lots of times when you meet people at their worst or on their worst days. And those are really hard days to kind of keep you in the business. Sometimes you think like, what am I doing? There's definitely been times when I've thought, man, this is really too tough.
I'm sure.
But the highs are really great.
Right. You have to be sensitive to the people that you're talking to and the stories that you're telling. And like you said, the highs when they're there, they're really high. And so I'm sure for you, like that just outweighs all the bad that comes with the job. So.
Yeah. And then you just get to a certain point in your career too, where I don't want to say you compartmentalize, but I do think that there is a part of me where I have to say, okay, well, this is what it is today. It doesn't mean I don't feel less. It just means sometimes you have to have, you pick up ways to get through things a little bit easier,
Right.
But I feel like I feel every story when I write it, for sure.
That's amazing. That's what sets you apart, girl. That's what sets you apart, for sure.
It's the passion, and we see it.
Yeah.
We see it, and we've been watching a lot of your stuff, and it's like I could just see the passion come through the screen. So
my gosh,
yeah, that's important. So
well, thank you very much.
So tell us about you touched about your upbringing a little bit. So what about like your personal life? You're a mother, you're a wife. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your family?
Okay. My husband, Jim, and I have been married since 2008.
Okay.
So that puts us at how many years?
14?
I'm like,
this is a math guy.
14 years. 14 years.
Wow, congratulations.
Oh, so 14 years this year. We'll be 14 years.
Yeah.
It's so funny because my husband always gives me grief. He's like, you always forget. And I'm like, I don't forget. It's just that after a while, I forget my own age. Sometimes I'm like, well, how old am I? And my husband's like, are you serious right now? And I'm like, I just can't remember.
Yeah.
It's, or maybe I don't want to remember my age. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. And so we've been married for 13 years, and then we had our son, who is 3 now. So we were married for 10 years without children. And we got to a point where we really were like, okay, we've got to either make this decision or make a decision not to have children. And so we decided to do, IVF. We had already done other things as well, but IVF was the way that we decided to grow our family. And so our little boy, James Joseph, is a miracle, and we had him in Seattle.
Oh my gosh, how cute. What a great
James Joseph. That's a gorgeous name.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. It's family names, because everyone on my husband's side is James or Jim. You know, there's Big Jim, Jimmy. Now my son is JJ.
So
and so it's fun to have so many Jims in our lives.
Special, yeah. All the J's, all the J's.
Yeah.
That's right. Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have anything?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm gonna bring it back a little bit to the journalism, and you did talk about how, like, you know, you weren't sure if that was something that you could do because you know, whatever the reason was that you weren't sure if this was the thing for you. What could be misconstrued about your profession in general, or about you and your profession and working in the Midwest, per se?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, maybe. The one thing that I always think people, and maybe this is different now in the, you know, in an age of the internet and all those things, right? And social media, but with traditional news, I think people think we are a certain way, and we're just not. You know, we all come from different backgrounds and experiences. We all have, an investment in the community. You know, I mean, I'm just like, my neighbors know me just as Michelle, you know, and then they go, oh, you've got a cool job. You know, back in the day, I think people used to think that reporters or anchors are, we should be held to a higher standard in terms of credibility. Like, we really need to walk the walk.
Right.
But I do feel like, you know, at the end of the day, we're just people. We're moms, you know, we're dads, we're, you know, family members. We've got pets, you know, we have hobbies. There are so many other things that we are. And so when we cover a story in the community, it's really to get answers, because we're invested in the community too.
Right.
And sometimes people feel like maybe we're not, or used to feel like that. But I always tell people first, like, I'm a human first, you know, right. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and I care about the things that I'm covering. Yeah. So I think that people maybe don't think journalists have heart sometimes, you know, because they don't think of it that way.
I can see that.
You know, we do have to be objective, you know, but the truth is, the one thing that I think I've just gotten better at recognizing is that we have to understand that we have bias going into a story and squashing the bias. You know what I mean? Because, like, I'm going to go into a story about the pandemic and about how women are suffering in the pandemic, and how women of color are suffering in the pandemic, and how working women of color are hurting during the pandemic. I'm going to go into that with the bias of, oh, I understand that, right? And so that's something that we can all relate to, but at the same time, I have to come to the story with an objective mind, and knowing that I have this experience myself, you know? So those are things that I think of just in terms of bias. I'm not trying to talk about political bias or anything like that, you know?
And some people might not understand that, and so just coming in with that angle is, you know, covers the base.
Because we all have lived experiences. I mean, that's just life, you know? So, but I do think that it's important that even no matter like what bias I would have as a working woman of color, I still can understand and empathize with my white husband, you know, who's also working at home and being and working from the home, and also a dad, you know. So that's what I mean when I come to the table with the bias and having empathy for other people I interview, of course.
No, that's awesome. And I wanted to kind of lead that into the next question. So you mentioned, like, being a working woman of color, being a woman in journalism, and then working in like a town like the Midwest, where we're a little bit behind maybe those coastal cities when it comes to that. Like, what challenges have you faced over the years and in that, just being a woman of color working in journalism and stuff like that?
It's hard because I feel like there have definitely been times when I have not felt supported. I think in St. Louis now I feel very supported, and very supported by my newsroom, my colleagues, my management, my corporation. I'm very grateful for that. But there were definitely times in this industry where people would say, we just don't have a business model for minorities. They only make up 3% of the population. So we don't see a need to meet them where they are.
Wow.
Right.
And there are a lot of things that have happened like over time. Like I changed my name because someone said, well, if a news director is going to invest in you, I mean, you need to come out, you need to have an Asian name, things that,
right.
have really hurt people in many ways because your name is who you are,
Absolutely.
And it's one thing if you decide to keep your maiden name, a lot of women actually keep their maiden name in news, but it just, to me, it was always like, you're never enough or you're too much of something. Where sometimes you just want to exist as a person, if you read my story online, but you don't see my byline, then maybe it doesn't matter to you. But if you see my face on television, then maybe it does matter to you, so those are things like, the great thing about living on the West Coast where there are a ton of Asian people, it was just like, I could be seen or I could be unseen. And I loved that, coming back to the Midwest, there is a part of me where I feel very seen. And sometimes that's great. And sometimes it's not so great. I've definitely just in the last 10 months of being here, have been called names like in the street, not like terrible names, but like, oh, Connie Chung's here doing a story, and I thought, oh man, I've heard that joke how many times in my lifetime, plus like 20 years ago, like get a new joke,
right.
Yeah. Get creative at least, right?
And it's not offensive, but it's like,
how many times do you have to endure a comment like that?
Right. And so that was, I think, the hardest thing, because there's racism everywhere. Like Seattle doesn't get a pass either. Like there were people who were getting attacked in the Chinatown International District. We just don't have a Chinatown International District. They had better reporting, in terms of like, not media coverage, but I mean, just data collection and all those things, because more people were present in mind to start collecting that data. Whereas in St. Louis, I think people are wanting to get on the board for, data collection. But if you call, I called the FBI and the city and county to get some, like, are there any anti-Asian hate crimes in St. Louis? And it was like, well, there were 2 investigated by the FBI over the last year or something, and 0 by the city and county over the last 4 years. And we just know that's not true because we've covered it as a station where people have been attacked and even killed over during the pandemic. So we know that maybe the data is not being collected.
It's not accurate.
Maybe law enforcement needs more training. I'm not going to throw law enforcement under the bus or anything, but
they're not putting an emphasis on it. They're not putting an emphasis on it yet.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's just not a reason to. Maybe there just needs to be more education. Maybe there needs to be an emphasis on it. Mm-hmm. I know that some Asian Americans in St. Louis said that they were attacked, or at least one person said that they were attacked, and the officer wrote her race down as white. So, I mean, those are things, that we just need to bring to the attention of the community so that we can do better.
Yeah, these things matter. So we have to progress some way. And
and not every crime is a hate crime just because it happens to a person of color, but it's just the idea of like looking at it and saying, okay, what can we do with this information?
100%. Right. So that brings me to my next question. Could you tell us what transpired on January 1st and the call that you got and just what that felt like for you? Tell us about your emotions, just hearing that voicemail, and then, just how that affected you personally, how that affected your family, and just if you could walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. It's funny because now it's been a little more than a month. It's actually been 5 weeks today. So it feels like it happened to somebody else sometimes, because I look back and so much has changed in these last few weeks. But on January 1st, I just did a little story about what Americans eat for New Year's Day. And it wasn't even a story that we put a lot of heart into. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing necessarily. It's just sometimes you do those kind of pacers to do in the newscast.
Yeah.
And so it's like a 20-second story, like no video, just a full screen. And it was like Americans eat pork for prosperity, or cornbread for coins, greens for wealth. It all ends up being wealth. But I actually saw that when I was reading my scripts before the show, and just said, hey, can I put in a line here? And I usually don't even ask for that, but I did just for time's sake, and my producer was like, yeah, absolutely. And so I just added like this ad-libbed moment where I just said, well, I ate, what did I say? I think I said, I ate dumpling soup because that's what a lot of Koreans do. And so Koreans actually eat a soup called tteokguk, which is like a rice cake soup. And then usually you put mandu in it, which is like dumplings. And so rice cake would have been more appropriate, really. Yeah. But I said dumplings. And I did because earlier in the day, I had really looked at like my social media feeds, and so many of my friends were eating this soup.
Right. And
I just felt like, well, they're American. I'm American. Why are we talking about, like, who's the default American? Like lots of Americans are eating lots of different things.
Absolutely.
Right.
The melting pot.
Yeah. So I just thought, like, I'm just going to throw this in, no big deal. And actually had some really nice feedback from people who, just a couple people, not like a ton, just a couple of people who said, oh, I saw that. That was great. Thanks for the mention. My daughter's making that soup for the first time, and I thought, oh my gosh, this 20-second nothing story made like an impact on somebody. Like I just felt like it was inclusive. Yes. Yeah. Like I was like, hey. And then a few hours later, that's when I got the voicemail. And now that infamous voicemail from a woman who called to complain to the station, saying that she was very offended because if a white person talked about what white people ate, they would get fired, and that I was very Asian and that I needed to keep my Korean to myself. She said I was annoying. So I took a video of myself listening to that voicemail and then put it on social media, and it
blew up,
took off from there.
Yeah.
Your life changed when that happened. And we seen it, and I talked to her and I was like, well, what if it was the 4th of July and I said as a white man, like, I like to eat hot dogs or whatever, like nobody would have called in and that's what I thought was so sick about it. Like, it just made me sick just listening to it and like hearing what she was saying. And then it just kept getting worse. Like she kept going. Right. And I'm like, so was that the first time you heard it when you were watching the video, or did you like say, oh, I'm going to just video myself?
Well, I had actually, so do you ever use the Marco Polo app? Do you know what that is?
Yes.
Okay.
We used that for a while during COVID.
My parents use that.
COVID, we were always sending each other messages. We're like in the house on lockdown, like eating cereal.
We use Snapchat.
Okay, yeah. So that's so funny because my friends and I say it's like the Snapchat for 40-year-old moms. Yep. But I love it. It's so funny.
It is fun.
So I was actually listening to it on the computer. I was I was leaving a message for one of my friends here in St. Louis, actually. And I was like, what is this? Because my assignment editor sent it to me. And he was like, what in the world? So I played it as I was like, I just kind of clicked on it as I was like talking to her. And then I was like, wait a minute, what? Right. I'll be right back. So I like hang up the Marco Polo. And then I just recorded myself and I listened to the whole thing. So it's really like listening to the whole thing for the first time with like
it in.
Dedicated ears, you know? And it was, to me, kind of almost laughable in many ways. Like in the beginning, you're just like, oh, that's funny. Like, I can't believe that person would say something like that with so much confidence. And, oh, that's nothing, that's just ludicrous. But then it's like everything, when you have a little bit of time to reflect on it, you start going into some really deep and maybe sometimes dark places. I kind of likened it in many ways. It's like when you trip and everyone sees you, you like laugh it off, you're embarrassed, or you think like, oh, I'm okay, it's cool, I'm fine.
And then you think about it by yourself and you're just like playing it over and over in your head.
And then when you're by yourself, you cry and you're like, I really hurt myself. Like that's kind of how it felt with that voicemail, because it was like, wow, that was really, it's such nonsense to me, but at the same time, I felt like she really meant it. She said it with such conviction. And then I thought, well, how am I even going to respond to that? Like, how would I even keep my Korean to myself if I wanted to? And then you start thinking of all the times that you did kind of keep your Korean to yourself because you were afraid of what people might say if you were too loud or too made something of an issue. Because I've been in those positions too, where I've complained about something and then gotten in trouble because I was the complainer, or how many times I've said something like, I think this person was being racist, and someone will say, are you sure? Because I don't think that's what she meant. I'm sure that she didn't really say it like that. Did she?
Reflect on all that. Yes, you
do. You start thinking about all the times you've been dismissed, or all the times you were made to feel like you were wrong for having a complaint about someone being racist, or, you can even go back to the times when you just like got hurt, mentally, physically, whatever. And you're like, well, how many more years of this will I have to endure? Right. Why can't I just live my life without having to deal with somebody else's opinion of me living my life, and you know what, the truth is, like, none of us escape that. Someone's always got an opinion about everything.
Always.
But I think when it's your face, or your body or something, you just think like, sometimes you want to be free of it. You want to be free of like the criticism or the critiques or the unwanted advice, because you just want to be able to exist. Yes. And now that do you guys have kids? Oh,
no, not yet.
Yeah.
No, yes.
Not yet.
When you have kids and they represent half of you and half of your, and I'm an adoptee, so I actually know what it's like to not have a biological connection to your family. But to me, I have this kid who's a mix of me and my husband physically. And I just think like, well, what's he going to endure? Because I read enough to, scare the heck out of me about raising a child who's of mixed race and wanting him to be confident and feel good about himself. And there's work that I need to do as a parent, And so I just think like, well, what's his life going to be like? So I just went down like a lot of different places.
Right.
Because, and you do it like in an instant, but it feels sometimes really heavy, and it felt really heavy. Like by the end of the night, I was like, I just don't even want to really like work anymore. I don't want to put myself out there anymore.
Yeah, you want to shut down a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, she
then it went viral.
She speaks on that a lot too. Like when we have children, being a multiracial couple and stuff like that, is like, well, what's he gonna endure that you might not know how to speak to him about, or him or her, or something like that. So
these are conversations. I'm biracial. My mom is white. My dad is black, and so I am fully relating to what you're saying. Like you go down this rabbit hole and you're thinking about things, and like I can name 100 conversations that my parents have had with me about their experiences as an interracial couple as well, and what they've endured, and just how you can be perceived when you are of a mixed race. And so I understand, and again, like how many times have I been dismissed or have I dismissed someone else's comment because I'm like, oh, I just don't even want to put the attention on that. So it's just a challenging thing to maneuver. I don't know what to say that, but to maneuver, and just again, like you're a mother, and this is a conversation like you're thinking about that you'll have to have with your son one day, and it's just very public, and now it's out there. And,
Yeah.
I know that you have called it a gift, this experience, and somewhat positive. So I just wanted to talk on, have you had a conversation with the woman who called in? Are you going to have a conversation? What does that
I did have a conversation with her, and I do believe it is a gift. I mean, look at what has happened in the last, few weeks. My life really has changed. I don't know if I'll be able to fully understand it until, we get some real space in between what happened on January 1st to, what happens 10 years from now or 5 years from now or a year from now.
Right.
But I got to have the world share their pride, and it wasn't just Asian folks. It was, a lot of solidarity hashtags. My favorites were very Jewish, openly Black,
Love it.
So many people of mixed race, so many people who are transracial adoptees, so many people in the LGBTQ community. I mean, I just felt like there were so many incredible stories being shared. And people also who said, I didn't feel like I was Asian enough to speak out on certain issues. And when I shared that I was, the product of two white people, my people were like, I felt seen in a way I hadn't been seen in media. And which is crazy to me because, Korean adoptees are like the first real international adoptees. I mean, the first big wave. And I mean, that happened during the Korean War. When I look at St. Louis, when did Missouri become a state? In the 1820s, I think? Don't know my history.
That's a good question.
I don't remember my history.
That is a good question.
Yeah, it might have been earlier than that. I think it was maybe somewhere around then.
Let's Google it.
Yeah.
Well,
it was a long time ago.
Do your research.
I know that one of the first Chinese immigrants to come to on record in Missouri was also in the 1800s.
1821. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
1821 was when the state Missouri became enacted.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the first Chinese immigrant was 40 years later. I think.
Wow. Okay.
I could be wrong, but that person came here and also married a woman of Irish descent. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, sometimes when you look at St. Louis, people will say, well, there are no Asian people in St. Louis. And then you go, wait a minute. There are Asian people in St. Louis. We've been here for a couple hundred years. I mean, well, I can't do my math. Not a couple hundred.
We're not on it with the math game today, guys.
Just strike the math. But we've been here for a while, right? We've been here for a long time. And we've been mixing with other people for a long time. We've been contributing to culture for a long time. St. Louis had a Chinatown that was born in the 1860s. I do know that. And it was torn down in the 1960s.
I'm like, where's it at? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it's called Hop Alley. So if you get a chance to learn about Hop Alley, I mean, here in St. Louis, we had a Chinatown that was almost a century old.
Wow.
And it was blighted and torn down for progress, quote unquote progress, to help build the first Busch Stadium. And a lot of people don't know about this. And I just think if you have some historical part of Missouri that was 100 years old, why don't we know about it?
Right. Yeah.
No matter what it is, and especially in the light of when so many Asian Americans feel unseen and feel invisible and feel like history is not being taught about all Americans, that's a really great example of how we can learn about our history in the city. I love learning history. I feel like it makes us better and smarter, and hopefully that we won't repeat things, that have happened in the past. But we have to be able to unearth history. We have to be able to unearth it and share it. And so anyway, I don't know. I kind of went
that was great. I had no
This is
idea.
the STL Bucket List show, so we need to actually share some. And what I'm going to do, Michelle,
You just gave us something new.
we're going to share this on social. So I'm going to do some research and we'll do a post.
Okay.
I'll tag you on social about Hop
That's
Alley.
awesome.
So I talk about pressure and privilege. There's, privilege is a pressure, pressure is a privilege.
Yes.
So did you feel any type of pressure to when this went viral, to take it and run with it. You said it was a gift, and you're like, how can I do this? Like, what went through your mind? Did you talk to your spouse? Like, how can I, take advantage of this attention I'm getting now and shift it into the Very Asian Foundation and other things? And I just look at your Instagram story. It's just so many people from all over are just tagging
coming together.
Like, you are so well known. Like, to go from like that is just insane to me. So just tell me about the.
And you had no idea it was going to take off. You
oh my gosh, no, because you're not looking.
No,
you're not looking for that. I literally thought like the same 10 people that interact with my stuff, would maybe tweet something out.
Sure.
To me, it's incredible just to have, you're right, the privilege of pressure.
Right.
And it is a privilege to be able to say, okay, now I can put pressure on myself to make this something memorable, to make this something meaningful. How do I do it? And speaking of privilege, I mean, a lot of people in the St. Louis community stepped up and said, hey, I want to help you. Let's do this. I've got an attorney who could help you, who can do this work pro bono. I've got these restaurants who can help you, all these things. Right. And it was amazing. And it wasn't just so it started in St. Louis, but then it was like, I got a friend in Atlanta. I got a friend in LA. I got a friend in all these different places. And it just felt like, okay, this is still feeling like really overwhelming for me, but I'm not feeling 100% alone. There are a lot of people who believe in it. And so they want to get behind it. And that makes it feel really beautiful and manageable. Yeah. So I will say I need more hours of the day.
Of course.
We all do.
I still have my day job. My day job comes first. My family comes first. My day job comes second, right? And then this comes third. But at the same time, it all ebbs and flows, because some days you're going to have to put one in front of the other, and February tends to be a really busy month for journalists in television, because we're in our ratings period. So we've got the Olympics, we've got the Super Bowl, we've got our special projects, on top of now launching this foundation, and then making sure that my toddler is like getting all the food and the nutrients and the baths that he needs.
Yeah.
So,
oh, wow. Not enough hours in the day. So
no, there are not.
So how did the hashtag come about? Like, how did you start that? Did someone else, or did you just did it and it just spread?
Someone else started it.
Oh, okay.
So I can't remember what I posted on Twitter, but I think I said something like, I wish I could say something back, and my friend and colleague, Gia Vang, who is a morning anchor at the NBC affiliate in Minneapolis, which is our sister station, owned by the same corporation. She shared a tweet with Hmong Foods and then said, use the hashtag Very Asian. And so I responded like, this sounds like a t-shirt, something like that, right?
Yes.
And so she has a partner who's in that space, like in the nonprofit merch space. And so that day they created like 5 t-shirts. They were like, they mobilized, they were ready to go.
Right.
And it took us like a few more days to just get our ducks in a row to make sure that we could even do that, and make sure that we could donate to the organization. We're still journalists, so we have to be very careful about, just decisions that we make in our own lives.
Yes.
And we got the okay. So we now, had this fundraiser going on by the sale of merchandise, to benefit the Asian American Journalists Association. And during that time, somewhere down the line, a producer from Ellen found it and called me.
Yes, that's my next question.
That was my favorite question.
That was the next one.
We love Ellen. I love Ellen. Love.
I do too.
Oh, she's the best. So how wonderful to have that platform, because your t-shirts are sold out. And so you can't even get your hands on them. But how was that with Ellen? How did that, you just got a phone call and, what were you feeling?
What's funny? The crazy thing is that it was a phone number I didn't recognize from I think it was from Florida or something. It was a weird number, and I just answered it. I never would have answered it before.
Right.
And I'm glad I answered it, because my voicemail at that point had been full. So I just answered it, and it was like, hi, I'm so-and-so from the Ellen Show. What?
Heart drops, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So I literally like pulled over into a church parking lot and just, talked to the producer, and she's great. Her name's Jenny, but I don't want to like give her name so that people aren't like, I'm going to call Jenny.
Contacting, yeah.
But I think her person is fine. She was very sweet. I clicked with her right away, and she said, I don't know if I can get you on the show, but I'm really interested in your story. And so I'd like to do a free interview with you on Zoom. And so I said, okay, sure. And I remember I had just dropped off my kid at preschool. So I said, do I need to be like on air ready? How much makeup do I need to put on? And she was like, oh, I'd get dressed like you were going to be on the Ellen show. So I like raced home, put on my fake eyelashes, put on my makeup, opened up Zoom, and then and talked to her. But it was great because her sister was an adoptee, or is an adoptee. And so I think that's how she found me, was through her sister.
Wow.
Which goes to show you that, everyone's got a story, a personal connection, and things speak to people in different ways.
Mm-hmm. And the power, like we were talking about earlier, the power of social media and just how things can spread and the amazing things that can come from that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Ellen, I am so jealous. That is so amazing. But also just having that platform, I seen your face, the picture you shared of you just in tears when you seen her. Like you probably like knew you were going to do that, but then when you ran out and then the check, like she supported the foundation, and like just the amount of awareness that helped build, that just took it to another level. Like you have millions of views on this stuff, but now you're on Ellen. And then, it's just crazy. And just the work that you're doing and stepping up to the plate, like taking the pressure, it's a lot of pressure that you're going through to like, cause you're supporting a lot of people are looking up to you. You have a lot of new young girls that probably look up to you as a mentor now. They're like, I want to be like Michelle, like stuff like that.
Oh my gosh, don't say that. I can't even conceptualize that, and, I've always said this and I mean it, like, I'm not a perfect person. I feel like I'm always running around with a chicken with its head cut off or something, so and so many people are really wonderful and like sending really great messages or stories. And I want to take time for all of them. I definitely, I want to reach people and show them at least that I'm supportive of them, and it's hard because I've never experienced anything like this. When you have, I look at my phone and be like thousands of messages, you just can't get to them because then the next day they disappear and then there are 1,000 more,
Yeah.
I hope it never changes, but at the same time, I hope I can manage it a little bit better.
Yeah.
I'm sure with time, you'll get there. We'll see. Yeah.
I know. That's why like we're so grateful that you I was like, I'll send her a message, and then you message back, and I've seen like in your story you're sharing these people, and you're just trying to like just let them know, just hey, I thank you for sharing it, and then you're stepping up to the plate. Like it's super inspiring what you've been doing, and I wanted to kind of lead that into would you call yourself an activist? Were you always like pro like that, or is this something that you just stepped into? Like I have a calling right now. Like
obviously it came very naturally, but now the effects and where we're at, that's a good point.
It's interesting. I saw someone put like accidental activist on their bio, and I thought, oh, that's me.
Yeah.
And activist can sometimes be a negative word for some people. Some people politicize it. So I always want to be careful about that, simply just because of my day job. It's really important to me that I maintain credibility and always being transparent about the foundation. The truth about the foundation is we, have all our paperwork. We have sent it. We're incorporated as a 501c3 in the state of Missouri, which is great news. We are still waiting for our tax designation status. So from what I understand, we can still take donations and we'll be able to spit out a tax receipt at the end of the year. Okay. Now, if someone knows something differently, then let me know, because that's what our attorney said.
Yeah.
But so right now, like all the very first push, we weren't a foundation, but we are giving 100% of the proceeds to the Asian American Journalists Association, which is a very dear organization to my heart, not just for journalists, but really for fair coverage. When there's something that goes wrong, the AJA is always there to say, no, this is the language that should be used, or this is how we this is how we would say you need to cover this in terms of using the proper terms, stuff like that.
Right.
And then, and now we're using our voice to, our merchandise sales to go to stop API hate, because we feel like without safety, you can't tell stories. But ultimately, our mission is to support diverse API voices. And that could be through storytelling, education, and community partnerships. So we've got a lot of things that we want to cover and have started down that path. I think our messaging will get much more clear as we, go on.
Yeah.
But in terms of activism, it's so funny that you say that, because, like, for instance, I'm just going to say this, and I don't know if I really want this to be like objective as possible, but I really believe we're seeing this wave of like Asian American children, students, and adults wanting to push AAPI curriculum in schools. Illinois was the first state to do it. Mm-hmm. Does that mean I'm an activist because I want Asian American curriculum taught in schools? I hope not. I hope it means that I want history being taught in schools because I'm a human being and I feel like that's a right that needs to, a wrong that needs to be righted. Right. As a journalist, I'm always looking for things to right, wrongs to right. I really believe that if we're not teaching students about the Exclusion Act, which was like the only act of its kind in U.S. history, or if we're not teaching about the internment camp, when we sent American citizens to internment camps, right. If we're not celebrating Asian American icons like Anna May Wong, then we're leaving out a good portion of our audience, of our students who need to see a reflection of themselves, right. And it's not to hurt the feelings of other children or other students. I'm not even going to get into like other things like critical race theory, yes. But I'm just saying, talking about history, we have a right for our students to know history. I think that is a wrong that we need to correct. Okay. Does that make me an activist? I certainly hope not. I don't want anyone to politicize that. I don't know.
That just makes you a human. That makes you a human. That makes you a human.
Well, it's what's right. And just like I teach English. So, and I work in a school where it is very diverse. And so I think, it's important to me as an educator to incorporate representation in my classroom. Like, my students need to, like you said, have a reflection of who they are in their text and have something that they can connect to. It just, it makes it's just equitable for all of the kids. And so I think that is important. And it can get very political and, like you said, with the critical race theory but it's having representation and equality for students to look and say, I matter too. Like, it's just not, Yeah, and
I think we do better when we know better, when we know all of history.
Right. And
sometimes history is ugly, and it doesn't mean that we are ugly people. It means that ugly things happened before us that we can change, So activist is a very touchy word for me, because there are things where I'm like, I kind of feel like this activism, but at the same time, I want it to come from a journalistic lens and not like something that people will politicize and use against me later, because just credibility is so important to me. And I really feel like, there are lots of wrongs that we've made right through journalism. And I just don't want someone's ethnicity or their background or what they look like to be politicized. And sometimes that gets that way,
Right. Great answer. I love that. That was good insight.
It was a really long answer. I'm sorry.
No, I love it. We have no time limit, so we can talk as long as you want. That's the cool thing about the podcast, So has the station, I being in independent media, like I've talked to a lot of people that work at KMOV, KSDK, like, have they stepped up and let you tell? I heard you tell your story like a couple days after, and like, are they going to incorporate anything for you to highlight more?
That's a good question. I don't know. They're always looking for pitches and ideas, and I always have given my ideas, no matter what. Pre-Fairy Asian Foundation. Yeah. I do think that I have to have an ethical balance, like if the foundation can benefit from something, I have to recuse myself or things like that. But I definitely think that there is a desire and a need to learn more about the city itself. We did an API special in October. So this was pre-Very Asian. And the response was great. And I was surprised to see that kind of response because I don't recall any negative responses at all. People love learning history. They love learning history. Why is it this way? What happened to these people? And so I think that uncovering history and then giving it, the context in the present day is really important. And so I'm always going to pitch stories like that. And I think that with, there are some real serious issues in St. Louis. Children are getting shot, children, there are so many disparities among families, all these things. So we have to look at things in a big picture, in a big lens, and from a desire to solve community problems. So I'm always going to pitch stories like that.
Absolutely.
That's cool. You said you did that in October, right?
Mm-hmm,
so,
yeah.
And then is it May is AAPI month? Okay.
Yes.
So
yes.
So that's going to come up soon. And so hopefully there'll be,
hopefully we'll do something else too. Yeah.
And I don't know, do you have some collaborations in the work as far as #Variation goes, or? I'm sure
Oh yeah. Well, we've got a lot. First of all, a lot of great makers and creatives are showing their artwork and coming up with great ideas. We do have maybe some plans to partner with people. We've sent celebrities our shirts, there are things that we're trying to do. And we've gotten feedback from people in that space who've been very vocal about stopping API hate and raising awareness. I'm really hopeful that we can harness some of that power, and make a dent in things. But, really our main thing in terms of the foundation is to come up with a sustainable foundation, something that we can, so that it's not just when our 15 minutes is over, that we actually have a foundation that we can serve not only the St. Louis community, not only our AAPI community, but the world. I'm not kidding when I say we had people buy our shirts from Australia, Holland, Korea, Canada, so it's we've got a bigger audience, I think, than what we realize. We just need to figure out
how to make
how to do all it.
Because you have all this momentum right now, and you're doing amazing at it. You're getting on all these interviews, and like you said, you have a family, so I do appreciate the time and stuff like that. But it's harnessing that new following that you have. So your following probably jumped. I didn't even know what you were at before, but you have 10,000 more eyeballs on you, or 20,000 more eyeballs on you. So it's how do I harness these new followers and keep bringing value to them? And it's not just with t-shirts. The t-shirt's just an easy way to donate, communicate, and do that. So there's going to be other things that you guys do, but I really want a t-shirt. I hope that you guys get some more in stock. But how else could we support if it's not buying a t-shirt? Is it sharing stuff on our social when you got
sharing would be wonderful, because not everyone has the means, or they just don't need another shirt or whatever.
Right.
If you want to donate, that's wonderful. If you pick an API organization that you want to donate to, that's great. Okay. But really, I think the amplification of voices and stories is so important. To me, that's priceless.
Right.
I love to see the Very Asian hashtag being used. I hope that that's something that sticks around for a long time. People said that, the last 2 years has been really hard because of the pandemic and API hate. And a lot of our hashtags used were stop hurting us, stop API hate, stop Asian hate. But this gave us an opportunity to celebrate, to flip something on its head and use Very Asian as a way to celebrate.
Right.
Felt really special. And so I'm hoping it has lasting impact.
I think it will.
It will. I know it will.
So.
I do. I think so.
We need a St. Louis representation,
We'd love to collaborate with you guys in any way possible. We do have a big enough platform where we do spread, for Black History Month, we're highlighting a Black-owned business every day this
Wonderful.
month. So
that's beautiful.
Let's do some, and we'll chat, and we'll do something.
Okay.
And in any way we can help. I know people have reached out about the restaurants. So tell me about that. There's 15 restaurants around St. Louis that you're working with.
It's great. Chandra Preisel from Chow Ban and The King and I, and
we love it.
So good.
Global Foods, United Provisions, and then the Asian American Chamber of Commerce really put this together. So it's been amazing to see the response. and 15 amazing restaurants are coming up with their own specials because it needs to be authentic and what works for them.
Right.
So just depending on the restaurant, they might give like 10% of their proceeds from a certain day, or like their certain amount of proceeds from their appetizer sales, or they might have a special dumpling. You really just have to go online and see what they're doing. But I've been eating out. I started eating out yesterday. I will be eating out all this week.
Yeah. Hey, that's a good excuse though.
We should
You don't have to tempt
Hey.
me. We might go. We're actually thinking of going somewhere right after this. So we're gonna go.
Oh,
we're gonna
okay.
look. We're gonna look at the list. We'll pick one and we'll send you a picture tonight too.
Okay,
I
but
love it.
with that, do you have a favorite? Like, what are your, I don't know, give us maybe like your top 3
It's the
favorites.
STL bucket list.
You cannot pick your favorite baby.
There's no favorites. It's all good. Any we pick will be
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the STL bucket list show. So we love like you being in STL for 10 months. You said now.
Mm-hmm.
So
But a Missouri native,
Oh,
you know.
Missouri.
So.
Yeah.
Missouri.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
And as you know, growing up in rural Missouri, St. Louis is almost like it's just completely opposite than, you know, another town. Because I grew up about 45 miles west of St. Louis in Winsville. So yeah, so but it just from Winsville to now we live in downtown St. Louis, it's so much different. And that's why we created the STL bucket list. We started exploring the city and we started supporting the restaurants. So like if you could give us just a few items that if your family, let's say like it's Saturday, you guys are all off, like what would be a fun day in St. Louis, like an ideal day in St. Louis for you and your family?
Oh, well, right now we're really into the zoo. So we
Ooh.
always go to the zoo.
Yeah.
Sometimes we go to the train museum or the National Transportation Museum, I should say.
Oh, that's the best.
Anything outdoors. Forest Park is awesome. I think for us, because of our son, it's really about being outdoors and being together and having an experience. And then whatever kind of food we can get along the way. My son is a noodles kid, so it's always like butter noodles and a variation of butter noodles, and then more butter noodles. So,
Always.
so for him, you know, it's like one thing. But like my husband and I will go. I mean, we'll pick up anything, anywhere. I can't think of our. Let's see, what do we do? We really like pizza, so we do Katie's Pizza quite a bit.
Yeah.
I also love Soul Taco. We go
Big
to Soul
fan.
Taco quite a bit, actually.
Oh my gosh, my
I love
coworkers,
Soul Taco.
we go
David's
to,
awesome from Soul Taco.
We go to Soul Taco every payday. We're like, all right, it's lunch. You guys want to go to Soul Taco because it's dangerously close to work. So we always
Oh my
go.
gosh, yeah.
Always.
I mean, all the restaurants on the list, like Akar, Chow Bon. Let's see. My Lee and Noodle House. Oh my goodness.
They're amazing.
Kimchi guys, I cannot get enough of kimchi guys either. I'm really into Korean fried chicken. Korean fried chicken is like the
It's so
best
crispy.
thing.
It's so crispy.
It's so
good.
crispy.
Yeah.
It's so delicious. That's probably one of the best things. One of my most favorite things to eat, which is problematic.
Where could we get that? Where could we get like some really good Korean fried chicken at, you think? Like
Well, I mean, I go to Kimchi Guys.
Kimchi Guys?
I mean,
Okay.
but
yeah.
but let me think, what else? Sando Shack. Okay, so I've never been to Sando Shack, but it's run by the same people who do Hello Poke. And Amy Guo is from, she actually is from Missouri, I think Chesterfield maybe.
Okay.
But lived in Seattle, probably the same time I was in Seattle, and then came back. So she has her food truck now. And if you want to pre-order, I am like dying to pre-order for her.
It looks so good. Their Instagram, looks so good. And Hello Poke is good too. And that's Seattle.
I love Hello Poke.
Seattle and the West Coast has such a good food scene. So when those amazing chefs come to the Midwest, they just bring so much more diversity to the town, and it catches steam, and it's like, this is amazing. We're such foodie. We could talk about food.
I know. Like, I'm so hungry. He's got a whole list on his paper now. Like, we have options tonight.
What I really want to do is kind of go up and down Olive, and really just like highlight all of those businesses, because I feel like a lot of those would have been in a Chinatown International District or something,
That's what I was going to mention about Chinatown, because I was like, when I go through Olivet, it's all the restaurants and even like some of the shops, and like it's like a mile long, and I'm like, that's like not at Chinatown, but that might have been people that got kicked out there and moved down or something.
That's what they said, when because people scattered in the 1960s, and a lot of them ended up in that area. But that area also is undergoing some changes too, because of like the Costco that's going in. The Korean Catholic Church, is also a part of that.
It's an up and coming area. It's in the Ladue School District. It's a very nice area. Yeah, it's so yeah, that would be cool. And that's like what we do with STL Bucket List is we try to find these neighborhoods, and everybody knows like, you know, the main Tower Groves and all these, but like there's other neighborhoods that have amazing food, and it's just highlighting and doing like a fun little story highlighting some of these people, and even bringing them on the podcast and hopefully bring some food in. That's why I was like, so that's amazing. Yeah. I love it.
Now I'm really hungry. So
yeah, me too.
I'm ready to eat. I'm serious. I don't have anything else really.
Yeah. That's basically all we got for you. We want to leave at the very end of the episode with you just letting us know how people can reach you, how people can find your foundation, and just like your Instagram tags and your website and all that. So. Oh
yeah. Okay. Well, if you just want to find me, I'm at Michelle Lee TV, and it's L-I. So Michelle L-I TV, like basically on every social platform.
Okay.
If you want to find me for like a journalistic thing, it's mli@ksdk.com. Pretty easy. And then if you want the foundation, it's very-asian.com. So I will say we will be changing that soon. I mean, we just threw up everything, you know, like as fast as we could. But in reality, we need like a .org, you know, domain. We need a lot of things to change.
Yeah, more than anyone. Like you just want to get it out there, and then it just kind of evolves. So for now,
So we've got some changes, you know, but we can't. But every one of us have day jobs, so that's the problem. You know, it's like, well, who do we get to help us with our website? Who do we get to help us market? Who do we get for publicity or PR? You know, who do we get for social media? It just goes on and on and on.
Well, speaking of all that, I mean,
I know a guy.
Yeah, I own a website and social media company. That's like our main company.
That's right.
So if you guys have somebody doing the website, we'd be willing to donate you guys a website if you guys wanted to do that too. Like we'll build it out. So just consider that. I'll send you some details on it. But I can.
Wow.
If you wanted it, your website looks great, by the way. Your website looks great now. But if you wanted like somebody to build out a deeper website, we would definitely donate that for you guys. So,
oh my gosh, that is. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll send you the details. Yeah, I'll send you the details on that. So, well, Michelle, thank you so much for coming on. It's just been a blessing to have you talk. You're very inspiring, and I hope that this is going to reach thousands and thousands of more people, especially locally. Like you've been here 10 months, and it's just starting. People in St. Louis really support people hard, and you could tell that. Just even they barely know you being here 10 months. I mean, and now like you're just doing the right things, and you're just affecting the community in such a good way. And it's bigger than St. Louis. So I'm glad that we could have you on the show.
Yes,
Thank you so much. I mean, that means the world to me because, you know, growing up in Missouri, St. Louis was it, you know, like St. Louis was our big field trip.
Yes.
You know, St. Louis was like the jam. So it's like, you know, we always wanted to come to St. Louis, and it was just the city to be in. So it feels really nice to get the community support.
Of course.
Well, sounds good. And then we'll just have you stay on, and then I'll stop the recording. I wanted to just chat with you just for a second. Do you have time?
Sure.
Yeah. Cool. Matt, we're done. Yeah. So yeah, we're done recording. But yeah, thanks for coming on. I just wanted to say thank you, and we'll get this out. Are the restaurants? They're only doing that for a limited time, right?
Just for a week, just until Valentine's Day.
Okay. So I need to get that. I'll get that out on social because this is going to air after that. So I just want to make sure that we shout them out. And then thanks for coming on. We're new to this, so hopefully we did a good interview. I mean, you could give us.
Oh my gosh, you guys are great.
You're a pro, so I'm like, oh gosh,
we were nervous.
This is like her jam, and we're just in here trying. So thank you for working
great.
with us.
You guys are great.
Thank you.
So let me know how I can help you and how I can support you for real. I'll do whatever you guys need.
Yeah, we'll send you the YouTube interview and like the Spotify links, and when we drop it, I'll like make the graphics for it. And then I'll get in touch with your email because I'll send you guys some stuff. If you need marketing help, we have a team here in St. Louis that does social media marketing, website design. So we really want to just try to help out if we can. Yeah, if we can help. I'm sure you have people, but if you need more, because it's all volunteers. So it's like you were saying, you work all day and then you're like, hey guys, we need to do this and this and this.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's
and
hard
with social media these days, it's like we got to start the day, you know, and then it's just so long. Some days I'm like,
Yeah, it's crazy. But we'd love to be a part of the project and just anything we can do to spread awareness. And that's why we wanted to give you, I know a lot of the interviews that you did, they're short. So you don't have enough time to tell your whole story. You only are talking about, because you're more than just what happened on January 1st, but now going forward, your whole life is going to be like pre, at first it used to be like, oh, pre-COVID. Now it's, oh, pre-very Asian. You know, you and your husband are going to be talking like, oh, remember before we were famous?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It doesn't feel like we're famous. You know, nothing feels like real. So it's really interesting. I go outside and it's like no one knows, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
That's nice. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
No, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And seriously, we should definitely try to go out to eat sometime.
Yeah.
And then just stay connected.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, you have a good night. Thank you.
You too.
Thank you so much.
All right,
See ya.
bye.